Hello everyone. I want to do a video on changing a tubeless tire. So there are already a lot of videos out there on YouTube that cover this topic, and for the most part I watch them all and I do things very similarly except for one part. Tubeless themselves recommend that you use soapy water to seat the tire, and a lot of people will use Armor All or some sort of tire lubricant for lubricating the bead when getting the tire on the rim. I don't actually do either of those things. I found a method online a number of years ago. I think it was in a Thumper Talk forum thread that I've been using since, and it's been working really well. So there's a substance out on the market. I believe it's sourced from Roswell, New Mexico. I'm not entirely sure. Doesn't seem terrestrial, but it's called slime. And this stuff is pretty awesome. It's meant for sealing tire punctures, but it's also super slick. So I actually use it to paint the mating surfaces of the bead to the wheel. I also use it for the inner bladder for seating the tire. So basically I cover a lot of the rubber of the tire with the slime, and also pump a bunch of it in the tire at the end to hopefully prevent small punctures and whatnot. This tire has a bunch of old slime in it, and I have not added any water to it, so it's probably going to look kind of gross, but it rinses right off because slime is water soluble. In fact, when you have a bunch of slime in the tire that you think is drying out, you can add a bunch of water and it'll thin it out again. Okay, so let's talk about what tools we're going to need. So first of all, you need a valve core remover, which is just a little tool to get the valve cores out of both the inner bladder and the tire itself. You need a 14mm deep socket to loosen the rim lock / inflator nozzle here nut so that is loose. I use a small torque wrench to retorque that nut later on when the tire is installed. I have the Motion Pro Bead Pro tool, which essentially just helps you break the bead. I find this is a lot easier than stepping on the tire and potentially damaging your rotor or your sprocket. So I'll show you guys kind of how that works. And you're also going to need a bunch of tire spoons. So I prefer this kind. I find this thinner edge works a little better for me, and I also like this angle rather than standard spoons. And I think most of these are Tusk. I think one is Motion Pro. I like to use a Tusk bead buddy. So this is just basically like a third hand, and it helps for getting the tire back on the wheel. It helps to have the original TUbliss tire installation tool they give you, which basically just lets you slip the rim inside the tire. You can do it without it, but I find when this works, it works pretty well. Of course, it does get a little frustrating when this keeps popping out, but we're going to assume it's going to go well today. And lastly, the most important tool in my cabinet right now, which is a paintbrush. Why do I need a paintbrush? Well, because it's easier to paint slime onto the tire than it is to spread it with your fingers, I find. So I'll show you guys kind of the messy process I go through, but like I said, I've never had an air leak from my tubeless setup, and for me, that's worth the extra effort. I'm using a Tusk tire stand, which isn't the most stable platform, especially since I'm out here on gravel, because it's a nice day. It usually does a decent job of keeping the tire upright. So we're going to begin by removing our caps here. I like to color code my caps, so my low pressure is just black, because black goes with everything. And then my high pressure is orange. These are, I think, Tusk caps. They're not the greatest, but they work pretty well. Okay, so that's off. Okay, so now we're going to get the cores out. Be careful when you do this, because they can just shoot out. That's mostly why I have them facing the garage door. That way they don't go flying out. But I try to keep my finger on it here. The low pressure is not a big deal. The high pressure is where it gets a little crazy. All right, so here's one. Just kind of want to inspect it, make sure it still looks reasonable. It might look pretty clean. So we're going to reuse it. And now we got to do the high pressure here. So my high pressure is, 100 PSI. So I'm expecting there's about 90 left in there. So you really got to be careful. Otherwise, it'll definitely go flying. There it goes. Yep, still looks fine. It's got a little bit of gunk on it, but I think it'll be okay. All right, now we're going to loosen this 17mm. I always got to remember lefty loosey. I do torque this down to spec. You can find the spec on the TUbliss website or on the little document they sell you with the TUbliss kit. I just like to know that I have the proper amount of torque on this nut, because it is also the rim lock, but you don't want to damage it. Okay, and then we're gonna loosen this one too. You could take them off, but I don't take them off just because that way I don't have to worry about rethreading anything. Just give it a little bit of extra space there. All right, so now it's time to break the bead. So what we're gonna do is, oh wait, no, that's the wrong tool. Okay, yeah, so we're gonna break the bead. There's really no special way to do this. Some will come off easier than others. Like I said, mine have been on for a while. So we're gonna go ahead and just use the bead breaker to try to get this bead down into closer off the rim. You just kind of squeeze it. And you see it separates the bead. Now this is where the rim lock is at, so don't go crazy in this spot. Just kind of loosen it. And then we're gonna walk around here and just do the same thing. This is already coming off, so I could probably cheat and just press it down. Apparently the tire's cooperating today. Yeah, you can see it's basically off the bead on this side. So we're gonna go ahead and flip the tire and do the same thing on the other side. You don't really need to tighten this. I just tighten it to give it a little bit extra stability. I would say if you are gonna use this tire stand, go ahead and keep your wheel spacers in. That way you're not jamming this onto your wheel bearings, or I should say the bearing seal, because you don't want to damage that any sooner than it's going to damage itself. So yeah, you can see this is still a little stuck. And we got our helper coming up. Hi, buddy. He's pretty good with breaking beads too, except usually just pees on them. Okay, so squeeze this in. Get this guy in there. Honestly, the bead just kind of comes off even with this. This is extra leverage if you need it. So once you're done scarring your rim, this should be good to go. I tell you, I love the TUbliss system, but the way it's designed essentially goes against the whole concept of how a tire is mounted, meaning the drop center is basically taken up by the TUbliss system. So it works well when it works, but it does make installing new tires slightly more painful. All right, so I flipped the tire back over because I like to have the sprocket here to hold the tools as I'm getting the tire off. The first few scoops are kind of a pain. They say to start with the rim lock side, which is right here, because that allows you to, see how that just popped down? That allows you to push this down while you're scooping it off. And in theory, this gets closer to the drop dead center than it would if you do it the other way around. So I actually forgot that for this part, I do use a little bit of Armor All. This is just to ease the taking off of the tire because there is a lot of friction between the bead and the wheel. So Armor All does pretty good in getting in there and allowing this to go off a little easier. But like I said, I'm going to be rinsing off my rim, so that lubrication will be gone for the actual install. I don't know if Armor All and slime can mix. I'm assuming they probably shouldn't, but for this purpose, it's working pretty well here just to get the tire off. So we're gonna start grabbing the bead. And again, this is the most crucial part. You don't wanna grab the bladder. If you grab the bladder, you're probably going to pinch something and you might end up actually breaking the inner bladder, which is a pain in the butt to replace. So we're gonna try to keep an eye on that and just grab the tire here. Okay, see? So what I like about these spoons is, you know, they're so sharply turned right here that it's kind of easy for me at least to get right under the bead without going too far. And you can kind of feel it. It's almost a tactile feel when it pops in there. There we go. And so I like to get about 3 of them in. My helper isn't helping. I think they saw a squirrel. I don't blame them. I don't like squirrels either. All right, so we pull this, and hopefully we pull this. There it goes. All right. We skin our knuckle. That's part of the deal here. If you don't bleed during a tire change, I mean, are you really doing anything, right? So. Then comes the fun part of trying to squeeze the tool back in. There we go. See, now it's going to be easy. So like I said, that's the hardest part. I find that sometimes it takes a few pulls back and forth to kind of work the bead, find the perfect combination. 3 tools work well. If you have a friend, you could use 4, pull them at the same time. It should be a lot easier. I don't really have friends, so this is what I got to do. All right, so we got this side of the bead off. So in theory, this side should be easier, but we're gonna continue doing it the same way. So we're gonna get 3 of them in here. One thing I didn't do is I didn't spray this side down with Armor All, so we're gonna do that now, especially the part where we're pulling it out. So get it down into the bead here. Just like I said, it makes life a little easier. All right, another 4 failed attempts here. So we're gonna try this one more time. Let me know in the comments if I'm just an idiot and this is supposed to be a lot easier. But there we go. It just feels like no matter what I do, it always takes a few attempts to get that spacing correct. All right, so the tire is loose. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pull out the rim and we're gonna clean it up. And we're gonna hope that we didn't puncture anything. So, best way is to get the rim lock on the bottom. Okay, get the tire in there. And then pretend we're strong and pull the guy out. There we go. All right, so this is the inside. So as you can see, there's a lot of dried slime. The rim tape still looks okay. They do say you're supposed to change that every so often. I watch mine and it seems fine. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this off, get all this gunk off of me and off of the wheel, and I'll show you guys how that looks in a second. All right, so as I said, I'm not 100% confident that I didn't pinch the bladder. So just to be on the safe side and not have to take the tire off twice, I'm gonna put the valve core into the high pressure side right here. And then we're gonna inflate it, but like I said, you wanna be pretty careful how much you put in here because This bladder can't, despite being 100 plus PSI when it's in the tire, according to TUbliss, you shouldn't inflate it very much without the tire on it. So we're just gonna get it tight. And see what happens. So I'm gonna measure, I got 12 PSI. So I'm gonna give it a minute or two and see if it's still 12 PSI, but I think if it were leaking, I would hear it. All right, so the way I just do this is, well, first of all, shake this up a little bit, get all that alien DNA mixed up nicely. All right, remove gunk, gross. And so basically what I'm going for here is, again, I want to get the inside bead, I want to get the outside of the bladder. The center of the bladder probably doesn't matter, I just do it because it's easier than trying to avoid it. And then this inside bead as well. And you cannot have too much in my opinion. Well, you can, but for the most part, it's not bad to get it pretty well lubed up here. Any extra is going to squeeze out anyway, so you're gonna have a bit of a mess. But again, you hit it with a hose and that just cleans up really easily. So we're just gonna do that. So I'm just gonna go through the wheel and do that all around. All right, so now that you got a proper mess, you can set this aside, and I personally also lube the tire, so I'll show you that. Keep in mind, this is really slippery stuff, so careful where you put it, and make sure that you don't get like sand and stuff, you know, on it. All right, so for the tire, I lube just the inside here. So if you take your finger and you kind of bend it, it's that amount. So you can use a finger. I kind of start with the brush and then I run my finger at the very end, just so I don't give myself friction burns. But I keep that inside lubed. We're going to then put the wheel in per the regular tubeless install instructions. And then right beforehand, I'm going to also lube the outside of the bead. And again, that's just so we don't have to use like Armor All or something to get it on there. And like I said, it also helps to seal against the rim. So bear with me while I struggle to do this on camera. Yep. Take two. All right, so that's one side. And we're gonna do the other side, same way. All right, so that's lubed. I'm gonna go over it with my fingers still to make sure that I got it all. And the reason I'm doing this outside, in case you haven't figured it out yet, is this is a bit of a messy process. I already got some on my shirt, that's okay. But last time I did this in my garage, it looked like an alien massacre after I was done with the install. So today I'm doing it outside. It's also a nice day, and I figured the garage is a better backdrop than a dirty garage floor, so. All right, so I'm just gonna do this real quick. Make sure it all got evenly spread. Again, just a hooked finger, that's all you need. The inner bladder doesn't come in contact with, you know, like this part of the tire, unless the tire is getting squished against it, but by then it doesn't really matter. The install is where this lubrication is important. So we're just gonna do that. There you go. All right, when you got a proper mess on your hands, you know, that's complete. So next step is to go ahead and get the wheel in the tire, which can also be a beautifully painful process. So let's see how that goes. All right, so I got the tire and we double check the rotation. So rotation is this way, which means we need to make it happen that way, right? Because brake is on the right side, chain is on the left side, tire rotates that way. You really want to double check that before you go further. One way to tell this with this particular tire also is the knobs are more vertical on the scoopy side. That's a professional term, by the way, scoopy side. So when you're accelerating, they dig in, and you want that essentially, you know, facing forward, right? All right, so now we got this figured out. We got the insert there. Make sure you don't hook your rim on the insert because the tire ain't going to go anywhere. So you want to make sure it's on the inside of that. Scoop this guy in, get it started. And you got to put some pressure on the top of the tire or wheel so that it pops in. There he goes. Then we just finished the job here. All right, so we're in. We can take this out, throw it away. No, don't throw it away. You do need that. And so now the tire's on the rim essentially, right? So now, again, be careful. Probably shouldn't be touching your rotor with your slimy hands. So we're gonna get started. For me, again, the second side is usually the harder, and I like to have the extra hooking ability for my spoons on the sprocket. So we're gonna start with the brake side. All right, so the next step in my process is to then lube up the outside of the bead here, which is gonna help us spoon it on. And again, it's gonna help reinforce that seal. Make sure not to get any slime on your dog. He probably wouldn't care, but then he'll insist on sleeping in bed, and you really don't want this stuff on your face. So we're gonna go ahead, actually let's do it this way. You might find at this point your other dog comes into the picture. So just ignore that fact and focus on the job at hand. And if you're wondering, yeah, they are the cutest dogs in the world. I'm sorry, but that is a fact. Okay, so again, you got a bit of a alien massacre on your hands here, but that's going to make life a little bit easier. Okay, so we have the rim lock on this side, and they say start opposite rim lock, and the reason for that is you want to basically be able to use as much of the drop that's center here as you can, and by the time you get to the very end, that's when you can just flip it over into the rim lock. This is also where the bead buddy comes in handy here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this tire a little lined up here. And then we're gonna place the bead buddy like that. I do find the bead buddy can interfere. So once things are on, I tend to take it off, but we'll see how it does today. It might be okay. Just depends on the tire. So this side looks decent. So we're going to start to get this side in. And again, I like the hooked portion of the spoon there. And you can see how the bead buddy's helping guide the bead down. Technically, you can push it down a lot more, see? That's why the second side is harder, because the tire's already taking up half the space, right? The first side is relatively easy to get on. So at this point, I could take the bead buddy out I could also drop that on my foot. Works out pretty good. And again, don't bite off too much here. You don't want to break your bead. So I kind of just go a little bit at a time. And this is a fairly soft tire, so it's not a huge struggle usually. But nonetheless, you don't want to waste, you know, however much this is. Yeah, see, like right there, that felt too tight. Let's see if we can squeeze that in here and pop it on. Maybe not just yet. There it goes. All right, so we got one side. So you can see that surface is then going to get sealed with that slime. Might want to wipe some of this off before it gets all over you any more than it already has. All right, so we got it on the other side now. And again, we got a brim lock right here. So we're gonna start this side, and you wanna go ahead and lube this up so that it goes on easier and seals. For all you artists, this is kind of like painting, except not at all. Still fun though. If I forget to say, you will have some slime leaking out over the first day or two as everything seals up, but don't worry about that. It's just doing its job. All right, so we're ready to get the other side on. Oh wait, no. Right, we're ready to get the other side on. It's gonna be easy peasy, not a problem. This is always a cakewalk. You know, things are great. Positive attitude is key here. Assumption of skin knuckles is probably a good thing. You may be rethinking your life decisions at some point. Standard, don't worry. Just keep at it. All right, so we got that. Grab your bead buddy. This is actually where the bead buddy is handy. Of course, there we go. Because now you can take this out and this out and see the bead stays. Again, small bites. This is an erase. Keep an eye, make sure everything's getting seated correctly. This is nice and deep in here, which I like because it's going to give me extra room to get the last piece over. So it's starting to get pretty tight. So we're going to go in smaller and smaller increments here. And be careful because these can snap back, so don't get your fingers caught and don't get smacked in the face. And I'm still keeping an eye in here. Yeah, see, that one wanted to go. Okay, so smaller and smaller bites. And kind of keep an eye on where that bead lock is. Mine is right here, so I'm starting to get off center a little bit, so I'm gonna keep going with this side for now. I'm gonna remove this. Push the guy back down all over. It's not a bad idea to do this every so often. Get it all as deep as possible. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to try anticipating our next move here. This doesn't always work for me, but let's see what happens here. Because it gets harder and harder to get the iron under there. Let's see if that paid off. There we go. Easy peasy. No hammers required. All right, so we're gonna start by tightening this guy a little bit. Okay. And I'm gonna hit the inner bladder with about 110, 120 PSI. But before that we do that, we gotta get the core inside here. All right, the big moment, you wanna basically hear a couple pops and make sure that the bead seats. Sometimes when it doesn't, you can give it a few more minutes and it will, or bounce it on the ground and it might help it out. I've had a few stubborn ones when unfortunately I had to take the tire back off one side and try again. I'm not sure what the deal was, but with these IRCV 33Ss, it has been pretty good. So let's hope it is again. And you can see the slime dripping out of some of the holes, and that's normal. So this bead on this side looks good all around. So let's check the other side. And that looks good too. So I think we have a winner here. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill the tire up now a little bit to let that expand fully and help everything seat. Keep it like that for a few minutes. While I do that, I'm gonna rinse all this extra slime off. Again, just hit it with the garden hose and it'll come right off. And then we're gonna go ahead, deflate everything, retighten our rim lock correctly, and then reinflate everything. All right, we're about 30 PSI more or less. So I'm gonna go ahead and go rinse the tire off and we'll come back to verify everything. All right, so I rinsed the tire off. You can see everything came off really easily. It's still holding air. So we're gonna go ahead and drain all this. In theory, you could tighten the rim lock to the correct setting right away. I just do it this way because in case there's a leak, I gotta take everything back off, you know? But we're gonna let the air out of the tire. All right, and we're gonna do the other one. This is the high pressure. No, sorry, that was the high pressure. This is the low pressure. Okay, so you want to tighten this TUbliss rim lock to 15 Newton meters. Double check your work. Yep. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install the valve stems, or cores, whatever they're called. Valve cores, right? Stem cores? I don't know. I don't know why you guys watch anything I do. And now we're going to hit it. All right. You can see, you probably can't see, but there's a little bit of slime squeezing out from the bead here, which is kind of what you expect because, again, that's helping it seal. So we're just going to double check our numbers here. Yeah, 96 PSI. Not great for riding, but for this purpose, it'll be fine. And 11, so we're gonna put a little more in here. And the more I put in, the more I can see the slime squeezing out, which is why I inflate it to about 30 or so to help everything seal. It's 23. 34. Okay, that's fine. Obviously, we're not going to ride on that pressure. This is just to leave it overnight and let everything seal. And make sure in the morning that obviously the pressure hasn't dropped significantly. It shouldn't. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. This is just the way I do things, and it's been working pretty good for me. Obviously, there are multiple ways of doing this. I just know that manufacturing isn't perfect. You know, rubber seals pretty well against the rim, but I like to give it a little bit extra help. And, you know, that's way I don't have to worry about soapy water and Armor All and everything else. Just one substance to rule them all. All right, guys, thank you for watching. And let me know if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. Tell me I'm doing all this wrong or tell me it's a good idea. Either way, I'm happy to hear from you. So thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.